What if the reason everything feels like it's unraveling is because we're losing the war of ideas? In this transmission, we're breaking down how the West lost its moral compass, why even good people are losing moral arguments in the public square, and what tools we need to win the battle for truth and meaning so we can all live well. That's today on the Restless Signal. Welcome to the Restless Signal, where we seek truth, wrestle with meaning, and strive to live well. I'm the voice of the signal, and together we're tuning in. Thanks for joining me. This is a critical transmission, maybe the most important one yet, because whether we admit it or not, we are in a war. Not a war of bombs or bullets, but a war of ideas. I've talked about this before. The war of ideas isn't on a distant battlefield. It's all around you. Online, in your kids' schools, in your neighborhoods, in the entertainment you watch. A lot of people call it the culture war, but that's too narrow. This is deeper. It's a civilizational clash over first principles, over the moral and metaphysical foundation of the world. Competing belief systems, Christianity, Marxism, Islam, and what I call Western secular hedonism, the dominant ideology of the post-Christian West, are all vying for global dominance, and with it, the power to define what's good, what's true, and how we live. But today's episode isn't about the clash of civilizations and the war of ideas. That's coming soon. Today, we need to start closer to home, because you can't win a war if you don't realize you're in a battle, and you can't win a battle you're not equipped to fight. Every day, all of us are pulled into the skirmishes in the war of ideas. Not just opinions, but over truth itself, over meaning, and over moral reality. It's not just that people disagree. It's that we no longer agree on what a thing is, what it means, and whether any of it matters. You feel it, you see it. The ground keeps shifting. Definitions are rewritten. Moral standards are reversed. And somehow we're told we're supposed to smile and keep up. But deep down we know something's wrong. I'm convinced of this. We are losing ground in the war of ideas, not just because our opponents' confidence or because they have truth on their side, but because many of us don't know how to fight. We don't have the ability to recognize and articulate from what is real to what it means to what it demands of us. So today, we're going to break it down. We're looking directly at the battlefield, how truth is being distorted, how meaning is being manipulated, and how confusion, silence, and doubt allow evil to march. We'll walk through some of the biggest battles of truth and meaning in our society, not to rehash headlines, but to expose the deeper collapse underneath of them. And then, towards the end, I'll lay out a way forward, not a script for argument, but a framework for clarity, something you can use. Because if we want to win the war of ideas, we have to know what is true, what it means, and how to fight for it. What's gone wrong in the West today isn't just bad politics, media bias, or cultural noise. Though all of that is real. What's broken is deeper, more foundational, moral. We're not just in a culture war, we're living through a civilizational collapse because the entire moral structure that once guided how we lived has broken down. The old framework, the path from truth to meaning to action, is gone many times. And most people don't even realize there used to be a path. So we fight downstream. We argue over laws, policies, actions, messaging, while the philosophical foundation beneath those has been hollowed out. This is the collapse, and it's why everything feels so unmoored. There was a time within living memory when Western civilization still held broadly to a Christian moral framework. Even those who didn't believe in God usually believed in truth. They believed human life had inherent dignity, that morality existed, that meaning wasn't something you made up, it was something you discovered, and that when you found it, it carried an obligation. No one lived it out perfectly, of course, but the structure was there, a shared compass, a common moral grammar, a sense that the good, the true, and the beautiful were real things. We've now torn that out by the roots. In 1900, about 95 to 97% of Americans identified as Christian, and around 40 to 50% attended church weekly. Today, only 63% identify as Christians, and just 20 to 22% attend weekly. That means we haven't just lost ground in identity. We're in serious trouble when it comes to people who make faith a core part of their lives. And the situation is even worse in Europe, the cradle of Christianity. A century ago, nearly all Europeans identified as Christian, and many countries had weekly attendance over 50%. Now, even though around 70% still claim Christianity, only 10 to 15% go to church weekly. And in some countries like France, Germany, or regions like Scandinavia, it's often under 5%. The West hasn't just drifted, it's in a spiritual freefall. In other words, most self-identified Christians don't actually think like Christians. They've absorbed the culture's assumptions, not the church's. So we're left with a hollow shell, a society still using moral language, but detached from the theological structure that once gave it substance. And once you lose the source, you lose that structure. We no longer ask, what is this? What does it mean? What does it demand of me? Instead, we ask, how does it make me feel? What's popular? What can I say that won't get me canceled? So when truth does show up, we don't know what to do with it. You'll hear people say, yes, it's a baby, but I still support abortion. Sure, biological sex is real, but gender is whatever someone feels it is. Truth matters, but everyone has their own version. These aren't just contradictions, they're evidence of a deeper fracture. The logic chain is broken, meaning has been hollowed out, and we're left with moral chaos, draped in the language of empathy. In place of moral reasoning, we've got feelings, slogans, tribal allegiance. Hashtags have replaced first principles. Instead of asking, what is this and what does it mean? We ask, what makes me feel safe? What will keep me liked? What will affirm what I already want to believe? And the culture rewards this. It flatters confusion. It punishes clarity. It elevates slogans that soothe over arguments that convict. We're no longer forming conscience. We're programming preference. And here's where it gets kind of tragic. There's still good people with a Christian worldview, maybe like you, who want to do what's right. They see through the lies, they feel the pressure, they want to speak up. But no one has ever trained them how. No one taught them how to think morally, how to build an argument, how to move from truth to meaning to right action. So what happens? They fall back on instincts. They argue results instead of causes. Or they quote the Bible, only to get steamrolled by someone who doesn't recognize Scripture as any kind of authority. And that's a key turning point in the collapse. Christians still try quoting Bible verses in the public square, often find they're arguing with people who don't recognize Scripture as any kind of authority. And they're losing those arguments, not because they're wrong, but because they haven't been trained how to fight on a philosophical ground. They don't know how to use reason, natural law, and ethical clarity to make their case. And unfortunately, that's the only language the modern world still even pretends to listen to. So we've got people who are spiritually right getting steamrolled in the war of ideas. Not because they're cowards, but because they're unarmed. If you've never been equipped for a moral war, of course you'll lose. Sometimes before you even realize you're in a fight. So where does this leave us? We no longer agree on what a thing is, so we no longer agree on what it means. And if we can't agree on the meaning, we can't agree on morality. And if we can't agree on morality, we can't live well. That's the collapse. That's the fracture running through our age. We didn't just lose the arguments, we lost the language, and with it, the structure that helps us live in truth. If we're going to reclaim it, we need something that rebuilds the moral chain, a way to reconnect truth to meaning to life. We need a new framework, one that can hold and go toe-to-toe in this secular world. So what do? If the moral process has collapsed, if most people have never even seen how truth is supposed to lead to action, what can we use to rebuild it? That's what we want to give you now, a simple, structured way to trace any moral claim from beginning to end. Not just so you can argue better, but so you can see better, think more clearly, live more intentionally. And yes, it's simple, I know that. Could you spend years reading Aristotle, Aquinas, and Kant, study formal logic, learn how to parse syllogisms and track semantic drift? Of course you could. But let's get real. Most people don't have the time for that, and many don't have the appetite or the aptitude. And that's not a knock on anyone, because truth isn't just for the gifted. Morality isn't just for philosophers, and the tools to think well shouldn't be kept behind the gates of academia. We need something clear enough to be useful, solid enough to be trusted, and humble enough to meet people where they are. That's what this is, a tool, a map, a framework you can use right now. Here it is. It's 6 steps, nested within the 3 core phases of the moral life: truth, meaning, and living well. We start with truth. First, objective fact. What is real? What actually happened? What exists, regardless of how I feel about it? Second, first moral principle. What kind of thing is this, morally? Not just what it is, but what kind of thing it is in relation to good and evil. Is it sacred? Is it harmful? Is it owed something? Does it carry responsibility? Then we move to meaning. The third step is discerned meaning. What deeper truth does this reveal? What does this fact, rightly understood, tell me about the moral order, about right and wrong, about who we are? The fourth step is moral implication. If I accept that meaning, what follows? What must I now believe? What other ideas need to be corrected? Where does this truth lead? Why does it matter? Fifth, alignment of the will. Do I accept what this demands of me? This is where a lot of people stall, because here it gets personal. I know what's true. I know what it means. I know why it matters. But do I want it? Will I submit to it? Will it shape my heart, not just my head? And finally, we arrive at living well. And in this is concrete action. How do I live this out? What does moral alignment actually look like in practice, in my relationships, my work, my speech, my vote? That's the moral process. It starts with reality and it ends with responsibility. And here's the power of it. You can use this to diagnose moral collapse, understand where people fall off track, strengthen your own ability to see clearly, and clarify how to speak to others, depending on where they are in the process. Because here's the thing, in a lot of arguments, people aren't necessarily rejecting objective fact at step 1. They may be falling off step 2 or 3, the first moral principles derived from truth. Or they agree with you all the way through step 4, they understand what it means and why it matters, but then flinch at step 5 and can't accept what truth demands of them. Or maybe even at step 6, they can't put it into concrete practice consistently. This framework helps you trace that path and see exactly where the break happens. Let me be clear, this isn't a gimmick. It's not a trick to win arguments. It's certainly not a way to go viral on X, although I wish it were. It's a way to recover moral sanity, a structure for discernment in a collapsing age. So in this section, we'll walk through these real-world case studies, pressing moral and culture battlegrounds using this framework, not to deliver a dry lecture, but to show exactly where and how the collapse is happening, where facts are denied, where meaning is inverted, where action becomes cowardice, performance, or cruelty. The goal here is to do more than diagnose. It's to help listeners see clearly, painfully, and powerfully how the truth is under assault and how they can fight back with moral clarity. Let's start with one of the clearest and most painful moral battlegrounds: abortion. First, step 1 under truth, objective fact. What are we even talking about when we say abortion? We're talking about a procedure that ends the life of a fetus. And a fetus isn't a vague potential. It's a genetically unique, biologically human living organism. Not a part of the mother's body, but its own life. That's just basic biology. You don't need religion or philosophy to see that. You need a microscope and an honest mind. This often collapses with people saying it's just a clump of cells. But everything alive is a clump of cells. That doesn't mean it isn't alive or human. That's denial dressed as dismissal. Second step, the first moral principle. So what do we do with this fact? Well, here's the starting point. Every human organism is a human life. That's not some fringe claim. It's the core of any moral society. If a being is biologically human and alive, it deserves protection. If you don't believe that, you've opened the door to justify all kinds of horrific things. The collapse point here is people dodge this by splitting hairs. Okay, maybe it's human, but it's not a person. That's an incredibly dangerous line to draw, because once you start redefining personhood based upon convenience, power, or development, you're no longer protecting the vulnerable. You're just protecting the powerful. Let's move into meaning and discuss the third step, the discerned meaning, the moral insight. If we take that truth seriously, that the fetus is a human life, then the moral meaning is pretty straightforward. To intentionally end an innocent human life is wrong. That includes abortion. It doesn't mean every situation is easy, but the principle is simple. And deep down, we know this. That's why we use softer language. We say terminate a pregnancy, not kill a baby, because part of us still recoils at the truth. The collapse point here is often my body, my choice. But here's the thing. The body being killed isn't yours. It's not your DNA. It's not your heartbeat. That slogan only works if you first pretend there's not another body involved. Let's move forward to step 4, the moral implication, why this matters. If it's wrong, then I can't just treat it as a personal opinion. I can't say, well, I wouldn't do it, but who am I to judge? That's not moral humility. That's moral abdication. If this is true, really true, that to intentionally end an innocent human life is wrong, then it must mean something. It's not just a private belief. It has public consequences. If the unborn are human, then abortion isn't just a personal choice. It's a moral wrong, and society cannot allow it. This is the step where the truth puts pressure on the world, where you say, if I believe this, then I can't go along with it. The collapse point here sounds like, I wouldn't do it, but who am I to judge? That's not humility. That's surrender. It dissolves the entire moral order. Let's move forward to step 5, alignment of the will to what this demands of me. Now it gets personal, because once you know what's true and what the truth means and what it asks of the world, you have a choice. Will you submit your will to it? Will you accept the cost, the lost friendships, the awkward conversations, the labels, the pain? This is where your spine has to match your soul, where conviction becomes courage, where belief becomes integrity. Where this collapses, it's not from confusion, but fatigue. I'm tired. I'm outnumbered. I don't want to be the one who always brings this up. That's not a lack of knowledge. It's a softening of will. It's moral exhaustion, and it's understandable, but we can't stay there. Let's move on to the 6th step, living well, the right response. So what does it look like to live well here? It means being a person of truth and compassion. It means supporting mothers, speaking clearly, voting for people who will protect the vulnerable, and offering redemption to those who have had abortion, not condemnation. It means standing firm and making sure your courage has a heart. Let's move on to our next battlefield, gender identity. This one can feel like walking through a minefield, because it's not just about facts or policies. It's about people. People we might love. People we want to be kind to. And that's exactly why we need clarity, because truth and compassion aren't enemies. They're teammates. And right now, we're watching what happens when society rips them apart. So let's jump into the framework. The truth. Step 1, objective fact. What is a man or a woman? As always, we have to start with reality. Human beings are sexually dimorphic. That's not ideology, it's biology. every human is either male or female at the level of chromosomes, XX or XY. You don't assign the sex at birth, you observe it. The collapse point here is using the phrase assigned at birth. It's doing a lot of dishonest work. It implies that sex is arbitrary. It's not. What we've done is swap reality for rhetoric, and a lot of people have gotten hurt in the process. So let's move forward to step 2 within truth, the first moral principle. So here's the deeper truth. Our sex is not just a body part, it's a part of our identity. We're not floating minds who happen to have bodies. We are a body and a mind and a soul together. That means your body is not your enemy. It's part of who you are. The collapse point here is culture says the real you is your internal identity, and your body is just sort of like a costume. But once you sever who you are from what you are, you lose your anchor. Everything becomes subjective. That's not freedom. That's fragmentation. Let's move forward from truth to meaning. And step 3, the discerned meaning, the moral insight. So what is the moral meaning here? It's this. To live in truth means living in harmony with your body, not in opposition to it. That might not be easy, but truth isn't always easy. It's just always good. When someone struggles with their gender, the loving thing isn't to affirm the disconnection. It's to help them live in integrity, with grace, compassion, and patience. The collapse point here is our culture has flipped this completely. We now say the person who rejects their body is brave, and the one who accepts the biological reality is hateful. That's a moral inversion. We're rewarding despair and lies and punishing truth. Let's move forward to step 4, the moral implication, why this matters. If we accept our sex as part of our identity and that it's moral to live in harmony with your body, then it would become morally wrong to affirm lies about someone else's nature. That doesn't mean we mock people or shame them. It means we don't join the illusion. Calling a man a woman might feel kind in the moment, but if it isn't true, it's not love. This is where it often collapses here. We're told if you don't affirm them, you're harming them. But compassion isn't the same as validation. You can love someone deeply without affirming a falsehood. In fact, that's what love often requires. Let's move forward to the 5th step, alignment of the will to what truth demands. And this is where it gets personal again. You will get pressure at work, at school, in your friend group. You're told to use the pronouns, play along, stay quiet. But you know the truth. And when you know the truth, you can't unknow it. You have to decide, will I live by it? The common collapse point here, not because people believe the lie, but because they're tired. I just want peace. It's not worth it. But at some point, we all have to ask, is peace bought with dishonesty really peace? Or is it just surrender dressed up in silence? Let's move into the last step, 6, living well, the right response. So how do we live well with this? We walk the tightrope of truth and love. We speak clearly. We refuse to lie. But we also refuse to mock, to sneer, or to dehumanize. We're not here to win culture war points. We're here to defend reality and to walk with real people who are confused or hurting. Living well means refusing to participate in the lie and supporting policies and leaders who agree, even if it costs you. But it also means making sure that the truth you defend is delivered with kindness. Let's move on to our last battlefield, around race and human dignity. Race may be the most emotionally charged issue in our culture today, and for good reason. There's a long, painful history here, but also a lot of confusion and a lot of manipulation. Let's walk through it clearly. Truth first. Start with step 1, the objective fact, what race is. We're all human, one species, one human family, Homo sapiens. But there are real observable differences between groups, skin tone, facial features, genetic tendencies. But those are surface level traits. There are no moral or intellectual hierarchies built into race. That's not opinion, that's genetics. The collapse point here is where the trouble starts when people swing to either extreme, denying biology altogether and saying race is purely a social construct, or exaggerating differences to justify stereotypes or supremacy. When we politicize the fact level, everything downstream gets warped. Let's move on to the second step, the first moral principle: equal dignity for every human. Here's a baseline moral truth: all human beings possess the same inherent dignity, period. There is no morally superior race. No group is more virtuous or more guilty just because of their skin color or ancestry. The collapse point here: the old racism said this race is better than the other one. And the new version flips the script: this race is always oppressed, and that race is always guilty. Both are lies, both dehumanizing. Let's move forward into meaning. In step 3, discern meaning, the real insight. Racism, real racism, is evil because it denies our shared humanity. It's wrong to treat someone differently because of their race. But it's also wrong to impose racial guilt or pride onto people who didn't earn it, good or bad. The collapse point here is a moral inversion. Today we're told that to be anti-racist, we must actively treat people differently based on race. Hire by race, award by race, accuse by race. That's not anti-racism. That's the new racism with better PR. Let's move forward to step 4, the moral implication. Why this truth matters for the world. This is where we zoom out. If the truth is real, then it reshapes more than just personal preferences. It carries moral gravity. If justice means treating people as individuals, then any system that judges by race, whether old school racism or new school equity, is unjust, no matter how noble the intent. The implication: we can't fix past wrongs by committing new ones. We can't build a just society on double standards. And we can't define virtue by who shouts the loudest or feels most aggrieved. The collapse point here: when justice becomes equity, meaning equal outcomes by group identity, it warps our moral compass. It punishes people who did no wrong. It excuses bias in the name of leveling the field. And it makes racial discrimination virtuous if the target of your racial discrimination is the wrong group. That's not progress. That's moral regression. You've weaponized the term racism. Let's move forward to step 5, alignment of the will. Now let's get personal. You might believe what's true. You might even grasp what it means. But do you have the spine to live it? Can you say out loud, that's not justice, that's favoritism. That policy is wrong, even if it claims to help. Because here's the pressure. The new moral order doesn't allow disagreement. If you dissent, you're a bigot. If you hesitate, it's fragility. You're not allowed to wrestle honestly. You're expected to submit. That's the test of will. To believe what's true, even when it's hard. To act with integrity, even when it's costly. To refuse the lie, even when it's fashionable. So let's move to the last step, living well. We need to model the better way. You treat people as people, not avatars of their group. You speak out against both old school racism and new school racial essentialism. You build bridges instead of camps. You call for dignity and decency for everyone. And you resist the temptation to let bitterness, shame, or fear define how you act. Our culture won't heal through slogans. It'll heal when enough people have the guts to stop playing the game and start treating each other like fellow human beings. I know this can feel overwhelming. It's easy to hear all this and think, okay, I get the framework, I see the chaos, but what do I actually do when I'm in the thick of it? When I see the culture fog roll in, or when a moral argument sounds off, but I can't quite explain why. That's where this last section comes in. I want to offer a set of simple but powerful tools in addition to the framework. So here are the tools I use and the ones I hope you'll carry with you. Tool 1, start with truth, not the narrative. Don't ask what side you want to win. Ask what's real first. Before you react, slow down and ask, what actually happened here? What would I think if this were flipped politically or personally? Am I trying to see or just trying to win? You can't build meaning on top of a lie. Tool 2, Use natural law intuitions. Most people already know certain things in their bones, that fathers matter, that lying destroys trust, that life, especially innocent life, is sacred. Appeal to that. Remind them of that. You don't need a Bible to know it's wrong when a man walks away from his kids. Tool 3. Slow down before declaring moral certainty. Moral meaning isn't something you declare, it's something you discern. Tribalism loves hot takes, but clarity needs pause. So ask, could I be wrong? How am I seen? Who do I trust that sees this differently? Even one night of sleep or a thoughtful conversation can shift things. Tool 4. Reject euphemisms. If you have to lie about something, it's probably not moral. So say it plainly. Don't say terminating a pregnancy. Say killing a baby. Don't say non-traditional parenting. Say fatherlessness. Don't say birthing person. Say woman. If you can't say it clearly, maybe you shouldn't be saying it at all. Tool 5. Accept that truth will cost you. This is one of the biggest ones. If your moral meaning always flatters you, you're not seeing clearly. Real moral clarity is going to hurt sometimes. It's going to cost you comfort, relationships, reputation, pride. But that's how you know it's not just self-justification. Tool 6. Strengthen moral discernment like a muscle. You don't get abs without reps. You don't get moral clarity without wrestling. You have to practice before the crisis hits. Ask yourself hard questions. Would I help a friend get an abortion? What would I say if my daughter came out as trans? Will I speak up if my job promotes a lie? Don't wait for the test to start studying. Tool 7. Rank the values in conflict. Most moral debates aren't between good versus evil. They're between two competing goods. Life versus liberty. Justice versus mercy. Truth versus compassion. If you don't know how to rank those, you'll get confused. Liberty is good, but life comes first. That's how we make sound judgments, by understanding which good must take priority. Tool 8. Use the 5 whys. When a moral claim sounds off, but you're not sure why, use this. Keep asking why. Here's an example. I think abortion should be legal. Why? Because women should have control over their bodies. Why? Because autonomy is a human right. Why should autonomy override the baby's right to live? You're not trying to trap them. You're trying to expose what value is being prioritized. And then you can ask, is this the highest value or is it out of order? Tool 9 is steel man both sides. This is essential. Most people argue against caricatures. You can't find truth that way. So, when you're not sure what your views are, make the best case that you might be sympathetic for, but then make the best case also for the opposing view. Then test both through the framework. Is the truth real? Does the moral meaning follow? Does the moral demand make sense? Are there logical breaks in the chain? Does one view wrongly prioritize an inferior value? Can your will accept it? Where does the chain break, or does it hold? Last tool, tool 10. Remember that you're not trying to persuade your opponent in the battle for truth and meaning. Almost always, especially online, you can't win. Your opponent is too prideful, too entrenched. Don't let that bother you, because you're fighting to persuade the hundreds or even thousands of others silently reading, many of whom aren't so invested in the argument and may have an open mind. So speak the truth in a way that appeals to them and would make you proud of yourself years later. Again, you're not trying to persuade your opponent or beat him. You're not trying to score points on an imaginary debate card. You're playing for a much more important prize. Even if no one's persuaded, remember that ultimately, you're speaking the truth for its own sake. There is beauty and nobility whenever someone anywhere speaks the truth when no one wants to listen. As we wrap up, today we learned about how the Western world turned away from Christian truth as its North Star. We stopped building on the foundation that gave us moral clarity, purpose, and dignity, and we're now living in the aftermath. with a war of ideas that requires innumerable battles over truth and meaning every day. That's what this episode has been about. Not just to diagnose the cultural confusion we see around us, but to equip us with something better, a tool, a framework, a way to relearn what we've forgotten. You now have a path forward, not just for argument's sake, but for your own soul, and so that you can play your part. Because this war of ideas and our battles over truth and meaning, they aren't going away. This is not just a moment or a season. It's not just politics or headlines or the internet. It's deeper. It's older. Pontius Pilate asked Christ, "What is truth?" 2,000 years ago. And that question still hangs in the air, unanswered by the world. But here's the thing. Even when we speak Christian truth, truth grounded in Scripture, much of the modern world no longer accepts that text as authoritative. Of course, that doesn't mean we abandon it. It should always shape reality and what we believe is good. But it does mean we need to learn how to fight on a secular battlefield. We must learn how to speak truth in ways that make moral sense even to those who reject the Bible. Because if we refuse to engage, or if we engage poorly, or with a language that they don't recognize, understand, or accept, then we've already lost by default. That is the war of our age. And the battle starts within each of us. We must win the struggle within ourselves by committing to see what's true, to wrestle with what it means, to accept what it demands, and to live it out with integrity, even when it costs us. But it can't end there, because the world needs truth tellers, and it needs meaning makers. It needs people who don't just whisper the truth in private, but carry it into the public square with courage, love, and, yes, skill. To proclaim, this is what's true, here's what it means, and here's what it demands of us. And to do that in a way that wins both hearts and minds. Because the war of ideas isn't going away. Our opponents are fully committed, they're numerous, they're confident, and absolutely certain they're right. But we're not helpless, nor are we unarmed. We've been given tools, hearts that let us see, minds that let us reason, and wills that let us act. We just have to pick them up and fight. That's it for today's show. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this transmission, I'd appreciate it if you left a comment below. It really helps me out. Until next time, seek truth, wrestle with meaning, live well, and above all, keep the signal clear. You've been listening to the Restless Signal podcast. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Check us out on the web at therestlesssignal.com.